There have been a lot of new releases published this year that have gone viral or popular on TikTok, and I wanted to do a little yes, no, maybe and tell you which ones out of the ones that I read are worth it. So I have a list on my computer and I just want to go through them. The first book I want to talk about is Ride by Ali Hazelwood. I have a reading vlog for this book because it is very different from Ali Hazelwood's other types of books. She usually writes very STEMinist books, very classic contemporary romance, goofy, silly, women in STEM focused books. But this is a change from her normal type of book because this was actually a paranormal romance following a werewolf and a vampire. I was pleasantly surprised by this book. So this book is a yes from me. I gave it 4.5 stars. I knew there was a lot of interesting topics covered in this book, specifically in the Omegaverse area, and that is not something that I am interested in. So I was interested in how she would take some kind of out there concepts and put them in this book and add her little Ali Hazelwood flair and make it fun and enjoyable. But she really did pull it off. I mean, I guess she can pull off anything at this point. It was romantic. It was funny. I loved our main character, Misery. She's probably my favorite out of all of Ali Hazelwood's main characters because she is a little less out there and more level-headed, and I don't want to say pessimistic, but like her name is Misery, so. But overall, despite there being like, you know, interesting things in this book, I thought she really pulled off a different genre very, very well, and this was such a fun read. So yes to this one, it is worth your time. Next is Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage. This is the second book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. I read the first book, Done Dusted, also this year, but the second one came out this year, and I just recently read it like a couple weeks ago, and honestly, this one's like a maybe. I gave this one 3 stars. It was a well-crafted contemporary romance set in the countryside, a little enemies to lovers situation, but it was very boring and very cut and paste. Like the first book in this series was very fun to me. I liked the characters a lot more. It was funny, it was enjoyable, it was lighthearted and fluffy, but like I enjoyed it more, even though it was predictable and easy to guess and again, copy paste like Hallmark type of book. However, the second book, Done Dusted, was similar in that way, but I just didn't like the characters as much. I didn't think it was as funny. I didn't connect to it as much. So although I could excuse the basicness of book 1, book 2 was just too cut and paste for me personally, but that's just a personal opinion. If you really like country romances, you want to try this series, I do still recommend it, so that's why it's a maybe for me. And I am going to still continue this series personally because I hear that book 3 is better, but book 2 so far has been my least favorite out of the 2 that I have read in the series. Next is Just for the Summer, and this book went extremely viral because it is her 3rd book in the Part of Your World series, and I really enjoyed this book. Now, unfortunately, I didn't adore this book and cry over it like so many people on the internet love this book. I get it. Okay, I gave this book 4.5 stars, I want to say. Actually, I think I only gave it 4 stars. Okay, 4 stars. So still a great rating, but it wasn't like a 5-6 star read for me. However, I would still say yes to this book and this series in general because this romance series is really, really good. Abby Jimenez does a good job at balancing like really lighthearted, funny, romantic plot lines with really lovable characters and just, you know, goofy romantic energy with also some more hard-hitting emotional topics. She deals a lot with mental health in her books. Specifically, the second one in the series deals a lot with anxiety representation, which I really, really appreciated as someone who deals with anxiety, and also anxiety in men specifically. But that's the second book. In this 3rd book, we talk more about family relationships because both of the main characters in this book have very big family issues, family traumas that they are working through in this book. And I thought it was handled very, very well. I thought it was enjoyable. Like I said, it was funny. It just wasn't a 5-star read for me, if that makes sense, but that does not discount it at all. I think it was really, really good. If you want a well-rounded, a little bit more on the emotional side of romance while still having funny jokes and stuff in there, pick up Abby Jimenez. Her books are so, so good, and I really enjoyed this entire series. I gave them all 4 stars. Next is Broken Rivalry by RG Angel. This is a college romance that came out this year, and unfortunately, I DNF'd it. I did not like this book, so I gave it 1 star. I got to, I think, 60% in this book, so I thought it was okay for me to rate it because I got so far, but I just did not enjoy this book at all. The main concept is that Poppy comes from a poor side of town, but she gets a scholarship to Silverbrook University, so it's the classic not as financially well-off FMC falls in love with the rich, talented, athletic jock from the university. On paper, very basic plot that has worked before. It's been done a bajillion times before, but in this case it did not work. The main characters gave me the ick. I was annoyed by them. The smut pissed me off. I didn't like any of the conversations with her friends. Her friends were annoying. Like everything about this was just annoying characters, annoying plot lines, super predictable. I just really didn't enjoy it, so I DNF'd it. And this is a no for me. Not worth your time. I think there are so many other college romances that you could read that are better, but this one's just, I'm sorry, it ain't it. It's not good. Next is Love of My After Afterlife by Christy Greenwood. This is one that came out a couple months ago and was also very viral because it is such an interesting concept. So this follows a girl who goes to the afterlife. She dies, and in the afterlife she meets her soulmate named Jonah, and then Jonah gets taken back to the real world. Turns out he didn't actually die like she did. So she forms a plan with Meryl, the girl who's like managing the afterlife, if that makes sense. It's weird, but she makes a plan to go back to the real world, and she has 10 days to make Jonah fall in love with her so that she can stay alive and not be dead because it's her soulmate. It's giving very much like The Little Mermaid. Ariel has to go back and kiss the prince so she can turn into a human kind of thing. But this was a really cool concept, and I thought it was going to be super funny, and it was funny. Like, there were a lot of, really quippy jokes in this book. I like the humor that the main character had, but on the other side, I did think that she was also annoying and in some ways very naive. There are scenes in here that I won't spoil, but made me viscerally cringe and secondhand embarrassment because of how she's like reacting to things. I'm like, you're an adult, babes, like so definitely a lot of like secondhand embarrassment in this book. That being said, it talks about the importance of enjoying your life and living life to the fullest and things like that. So there were really good messages in this book, even though the main character was not really vibing with me, or I wasn't vibing with her. So in general, I gave this 3 stars. I'd say it's a maybe, a strong maybe. I think you probably would still enjoy this book, but I would just be careful about the main character because she can be a little bit annoying to read about, in my opinion. So strong maybe. Next is Funny Story by Emily Henry, and I bet you've seen this cover somewhere on the internet because it is extremely popular. All of her main ones that are absolutely viral are advertised as a mix between literary fiction and romance. So there is romance plot that's like the main focus, but there's also other elements that like make it more general women's fiction or just general fiction. But in this particular book, we have our main character, Daphne, and she is engaged to marry this guy named Peter, I want to say. Yeah, her fiance Peter. But then Peter's childhood best friend, Petra, confesses her love for him, and then they run off and he leaves Daphne. And so now Daphne has no place to live. She has just broken an engagement and she's very much lost in life. And so she decides to move in with Miles, who was Petra's ex, if that makes sense. So because both of their exes left them, they decide to move in together and live together. Miles is very different. When we first meet him, like that first scene with him, he's like not doing well. He's like a junkie. He's smoking, I think. He's unclean. He's very much not in a good place in his life, but also neither is Daphne. I mean, they've both been left by their exes. Like, it's obviously not a good place to be in, but I like that Emily Henry can take on the surface not a traditional or conventionally attractive MMC and round out his character and make both the main characters very lovable, very personable, very realistic. I really liked both our main characters. The one thing that I didn't love in this book was the more literary fiction aspect of it. Like I said, she does kind of mesh those two together. Reading an Emily Henry book, that is what I'm getting myself into, so I do understand that. However, that's why it's not my favorite book of all time, because it does have those other elements in it. So depending on what you like, that may influence how much you like this book, but I did give it 4 stars, and I would give it a yes, because whether you are on the more romance side or on the more literary fiction side, I do think this book has a good balance of both, similar to Abby Jimenez. So if you like that kind of vibe, if you like Abby, you probably will like Emily Henry's Funny Story. Next is Obsession by Harley Beck. This is a dark romance that came out this year. Not as popular, you may not have heard of it, but I just recently read it last week, and I gave it, drumroll please, 1 star. It follows the romance between a serial killer who is in prison waiting for the death penalty and a journalist. I have read, surprisingly, multiple books about serial killers and romances with serial killers, and that part wasn't the problem for me. The part that was the issue for me that I actually wrote about in my review, which I'll pull up right here, they talk a lot about Robbie, who was the serial killer's trauma in his childhood and why that influenced him to become a serial killer. And I get that there's like a causation attached to that. However, I don't think that it's justified for the childhood trauma to then translate to him raping and killing multiple women and making him a love interest. Like, I never got past that. It was also incredibly insta-love for no reason. I never felt the connection or the chemistry between them at all. Incredibly predictable. Like, I predicted every single thing that happened in this book. It was also incredibly convenient. Of course, he would just happen to slip the police's gaze. It's way too easy, way too convenient. It was not romantic. I hated both the main characters. It was a big mess, honestly. And like I said, I've read other books about serial killers. For example, the Mind series comes to mind by S.D. Abbey. That series is based around a girl named Lana Myers, who is a serial killer, and she's basically killing her abusers from when she was young. In my mind, and this is like warped justification, I understand that. It's also a fictional plot, so let's keep that in mind. In my mind, it makes more sense for you to kill your previous abusers than to just go killing random innocent women that have nothing to do with you and justify that. In my head, those are 2 different camps, and I support Lana and I don't support Robbie, if that that makes sense. You may disagree with me, that's fine. Just my opinion for fictional books, and this is a no from me. Don't pick it up, not worth your time. The last two books on this list are, of course, the ever popular Reckless and Powerful by Lauren Roberts. I do want to talk about these separately. So first, Powerful. This is a novella that follows one of the side characters in the first book, and it follows her POV during what happened during the first book, so it's like the same timeline but from a different perspective. If you know how the first book ends, you know that this is a quite sad book. I'm not going to spoil what happens, but like we do know going into this book exactly how it's going to end. I thought it was an interesting book to see someone else's point of view, but in general I just didn't like Adina that much, respectfully. Like, she just wasn't my favorite character. She didn't stand out to me. The main character in this book didn't stand out to me either, and so I read this book to read it because it was in the series, but I didn't really enjoy my time. I was just kind of breezing through it, and I didn't feel too emotionally attached. I didn't cry, so I gave this book a 3-star. I'm gonna say it's a maybe. You may enjoy it, but I just kind of you know, it was fine. It was there. I read it. I don't think it's necessary for you to read if you're going to read the rest of this series, if that makes sense. I think you can skip this one if you don't want to read it. Now, that being said, the rest of the series is Reckless by Lauren Roberts. Well, the third book isn't out yet. This is the second book, but I really enjoyed this book. Everyone prefers the first book. I prefer the second one. I gave Powerless 4 stars. I gave this one 4.5 stars, and this is an absolute yes read from me. Now, it is difficult because this book is different than the first book. The first book is very action-paced. They're going through trials. This one is much more toned down, less action-packed. It's more about character growth as they're just traveling throughout the kingdom. Like, it's very boring as far as plot goes. So maybe it like verges on the maybe territory than the yes territory, but I encourage you to read this book because I really enjoyed it. I liked a lot the conversations that Kai specifically, but also Peyton just had in this book. I really liked Kai in this book more than I did in the first one. For some reason, he really got rounded out and more developed in this book. The plot is at the end of this book, unfortunately. I did guess early on. I think it's very obvious in my opinion, so it's not very like high stakes, but I did sob my eyes out at the end anyway because I knew it was coming, but I didn't want it to come, if that makes sense. And if you know, you know. But that being said, I really did enjoy this book, and I'm so excited for the third one. So this is a yes for me. The last book that I want to talk about on this list that I forgot about because it wasn't on Goodreads, but I did start Wild Love by Elsie Silver this year. Unfortunately though, I did DNF it, so I didn't actually rate it on Goodreads because I didn't get far enough to rate it. This book is the start of a new series. This is her Rose Hill series, which is similar to her Chestnut Springs series because the first book follows Ford, who is the brother of Willa, who is the main FMC in the second book in Chestnut Springs. Ford is a billionaire, single dad. I think he's a record producer or album producer. He works in the music industry, and this is a classic brother's best friend romance book in a small country town. Unfortunately, this one did not stand out to me, and listen, I love Elsie Silver. I read the entire Chestnut Springs series, and I love that series. I gave every book like 5 stars, but this one I DNF'd. I don't really know why. Maybe it was just not the right time for me to read the book, but unfortunately I just didn't really connect with the characters at all. I thought it was very just mid for Elsie. Like, the writing was fine, it's a good romance, but it doesn't have that extra Elsie spark that I'm used to because her books are always so engaging. They pull me in, they're romantic. This one was just kind of meh to me, you know? And again, I didn't finish the book, I DNF'd it, so maybe if I finished it I would think differently, but I would say this is a maybe for you, but also I don't really know if I have a say in swaying your opinion because I didn't finish it, but that's where I'm at. I am hearing a lot of good reviews for the second book that are better than the first reviews for the first book, so maybe the second one is better and I should start there, but I don't even know if I'm gonna pick up Wild Love anymore. It wasn't my thing. But on that unfortunate note, I am gonna end this video. Let me know what other books that were released this year that you read that maybe I didn't, that you want to give me your opinions on, whether it's a yes, no, or maybe. As always, subscribe to my channel. I post new book videos every single Thursday, and next week I'm gonna have a really interesting reading vlog out for you guys, so look out for that. I love you guys so much. Have an amazing week, and if you want to watch my most recent vlog, I will have it right here on the screen. Goodbye.